Hello again, welcome back. Uh, on the last one, you see me glue it all together, and it's had 24 hours or so to dry. So what I'm going to do now is trim it up. In my router table, I've got a flush trim bit, so I shall trim that round, and then I shall, when that's done, I shall change over to a round over bit and put a slight round on it. I'll be using a 5mm bit. So I'll get set up for machining. I'll be back with you. Hello again, thank you for joining me back. We're on to the next stage. I've last time I was sticking it together and machining it. Now I'm roughly sanded it. I've also cut it so the lids now here we go. So the lids now a separate part. Cutting for the bottom hinges, for the hinges rather, I'm just using 1 inch standard 1 inch 25mm brass butt hinges. I've cut in already on the bottom, so I thought today I'll show you marking up and putting them cutting the top ones, and we'll go from there. So by cutting out on the bottom, hold the lid back together, and then I've marked where the top part of the hinge will go. So I'll just finish marking it out, and then we'll cut them out and show you how it goes. I'm already using a marking gauge. I don't know if they're standard things. This one technically is a mortise gauge because it's got the extra prongs, but I've marked the marks there and then scored me lines. That's set to the depth of the hinge. So I've done that. So now what I'm going to do is just mark across where I'm going to cut out, then chop it out. So like that. If you turn them upside down like that, you've then got, that'll mark your depth then, or your distance you'll cut from the front to give you your hinges. Square line it up with the mark on the outside. Obviously both the same. Like that. Let's have one of me hinges. I like to cut it with a, or not cut it, but score it with a Stanley knife, because then that gives you your gives you a nice clean line. Gives me marks, make it easier to see. A pencil. When you're doing this sort of thing, make sure your pencil's sharp, because you get a finer line then, and a lot of this is all about accuracy. What I like to do the same across the grain. Also gives you somewhere to put your chisel, rather than to line it up with just a mark. You've got a cut line there to drop your edge of your chisel in. Like that. You see? So, well, you can see it, but it's there marked. Make life easier. Just clamp it down, stop it moving too much. And what you do is start chisel back from the line a bit. Couple of taps, you don't need a vast amount. I've got that. Chiseling that cut I made earlier. If you loosen the material first, it tends to give you a better cut, because if you don't, with a bevel on the chisel, as you hit it, it will push slightly to the outside. Okay. Same this side. Hope you can see this alright. Drop it in that cut. That's that. Also, with having the groove at the marking gauge is left, gives you somewhere to drop a chisel in. But when you're doing this, be exceptionally careful. Don't put your fingers behind where you're pushing, because they can ride up and slip, and if it does, it goes straight in your finger, and as it's sharp enough to cut wood, your fingers won't stop it very well. Then gently pare it off. We've got that cut line, just to trim the back off. It's best not to do that too hard, because you can split the back of the hinge out, or back of the wood that should be left for your hinge. Snug. You can always take more out. It's a lot easier to take a bit more out than to try to put it back. I don't like big gaps around the hinges. I like them to sit nice and snug, and they look proper then. And being like that. Feeling a little bit proud. If you run your nail over it like that, you can feel the hinge. That side's alright. That side, it's risen up a bit. Simple matter. Drop a bit more out, or chop a bit more, I should say. And same trick, you can feel it with your nail better than you will your fingers. That one's slightly underneath, then they allow for wood movement and all then. So, one done, move over, same again. Don't put too much pressure, because if you do, you'll slip and you'll take out that little bit of wood there. And then obviously you've got to glue it back together, which makes a mess. If it's really thin, I have done it where I have a bit of scrap wood and clamp on the back, so then it doesn't push that bit out as you're cutting. But it's not really necessary on these two, because I've got a bit of meat left there to cut off. So exactly the same principle. Just clean it up a bit. Fine with pine, it does splinter a little bit, but it doesn't matter, that's under the ends, so no bugger's gonna see him. Yeah, it's a little bit snug, so I find if you do it that way, you can bring your chisel back your bar and then lift it up. It's easier than trying to stab it from that end. Bit easier on a bigger hinge, you've got a bit more room to work. The principle's the same, whatever butt hinge you're using. Again, feel it. You'll feel the ridge more with your nail than you ever will with your skin, because you hear it catch. Just do with a bit. If you've got to move it, if you put one corner in, that gives you your flat. You can then pare a little bit off as you go, like that. Oh, yeah, well. That's in nicely. Alright, put it all together. They should line up. Said in theory. I'm not going to fit these properly yet because I've still got to sand it a bit more, and then I shall oil it to finish it off. But I shall put them in on the sort of screw these and then screw them in the top on the final fitment, because I'm using little brass screws, and if you aren't careful they're very easy to strip the heads out and to make a mess of them. So I only tend to put them in, try to put them in as little as possible even. But yeah, that's the basic one. So I shall take it outside now, sand it all up, and then oil it, put the hinges. I've got some little catches to put on the front, and then I shall show you the final result. Oh, well, welcome back. Thank you for joining me again. As you can see, it's all finished. It's all finished in, I use the old Danish oil because it gives a very long lasting, quite a hardy surface. You see, put the hinges and the clips on, and got the stuff inside. I have to move around a bit, but you can see the basics of it. It's alright. The hinges are cut in, all the clips and all on them. I like to, when I'm using slotted screws, I like to line them up in line with the longest axis. It just gives it that more of a professional finish. So yeah, one of them. Another jobbed. I'm quite pleased with it. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the video and you'll watch some more. Bye bye now.